Hey, you guys, happy Monday, and welcome back to another episode of Demons Forever, which is the final book in my Shadow Demon saga. I have been playing around with different locations in this house. I currently have the windows open because it's raining outside. We can't keep the windows open when it's sunny because this house gets way too hot. But no matter what I do, it's just a blue house. There's a blue cast on everything. I've tried different lighting. I'm obviously sitting on the floor this time in front of the couch, but all the walls in this house are blue. And so when it's like overcast outside, it's just a blue house. So we'll just pretend we're in Shadow World where there are sapphires everywhere or something, because it is very blue and there's nothing I could do about it. Also, I'm sitting on the floor in front of the couch, and Evie, this is her one thing that she got from Moat Aquarium. I meant to talk about it some on Friday. I also meant to wear my manatee t-shirt that we got at the Moat Aquarium, but I forgot. So I wore it during some of the live streams this weekend. But she got to pick out one. She and Andrew both got to pick out one little critter from the stuffed animals at the gift shop, and she chose the alligator, and she has been sleeping with this guy every night. She is currently down for her nap, though, and she does not have him in there, but she loves him. So he's here on the couch. Over here to the other side is like all her Paw Patrol guys, but Andrew wanted to put his stuffies in here too. So he has his creeper, and then this was his choice from the gift shop, and this is blue also, and you can tell it's blue, but it also is like, is it blue or is it white and it looks blue because the lighting is blue? But this is a cuttlefish, and that was one of the coolest things that we saw at the aquarium was the cuttlefish. It was just so neat to see them because they like interacted with you. I do have some video of it, but it's like you put your face close to the glass, and they were like maybe this big, the little cuttlefish, they come up and they're looking at you and they're changing colors. It was so cool. It was a really cool thing. So that was something we did before we moved to this house. We have been out to we've been out to a park. I went out shopping yesterday, but mostly we've been kind of stuck in the house, and we are all kind of looking forward to leaving this house. This house will not be our favorite of the trip, as you can tell, but you know what? We're making it work, and it's going to be fine. It's temporary, so it's all good. But we had pretty good weekend. I feel like the weather was much nicer. We made it out to a park that's not really affected by the red tide stuff that we had issues with here on the beach. I feel like overall, maybe the red tide is a little bit better. So it's been raining today, but if it gets better this afternoon or tomorrow, we might try the beach again and kind of see how it goes. But this has kind of been our lives. We're trying to settle back into homeschool for the week. It's one of those things where it's like, what is today? So I'm recording this on Monday, but I'll obviously be putting it up as a premiere at 4. And I'm also going to go ahead right after this and go ahead and record Wednesday's episode. And just keep in mind that Friday, we will not have an episode or a coffee chat because I will be speaking at the NINC conference. So NINC, it stands for Novelists Inc. And you can't get into this program or this organization for writers without having sold a certain amount of books. So everybody who will be there will be a published, successful author to some degree. And that is one of the things that makes this particular conference really cool, is because you are speaking to a group of people that are a part of the business. Some of them are traditionally published. Some of them are self-published, but there's no unpublished authors there. It's all published authors, which is a little bit of a different audience than like an RWA conference, which is also really cool to get to talk to people who are not published, but it's just kind of a neat thing. Plus I have many of my really good friends are going to be there. Ines Johnson, I'm sure you guys have heard of her before. If not, she is an amazing author and she is a good friend of mine. And she's going to be speaking on turning your book into a screenplay. And also she's going to be talking about serializing your work. And so I'm excited about hearing her like 2 presentations. Also, Dave Chesson is going to be there. He runs a site called Kindlepreneur, and he's got some really cool stuff to talk about with Amazon. I'm going to meet with Julie Braunschweiger from Barnes & Noble. She's my representative from Barnes & Noble B&N Press. And so I love seeing her. I've met her on several occasions. So there's just going to be a lot of cool stuff happening. So I will be gone from Wednesday. There's an industry guest reception for all the speakers on Wednesday afternoon. So I probably will not be at the live stream on Wednesday for the premiere to chat. If I am, I'll just be there very briefly, but I think I'll be driving over there and getting things set up, like registered for the conference and stuff. But Wednesday's episode is a really good one, and you get a lot of really good information. So I'm like, oh, I hate that I'm going to miss it, but I'll have to come back and watch the comments on the replay because I'm pretty excited about this week's episodes, and I hope you are too. So today we are reading episode 11 of Demons Forever. And basically what happened in the last week's episodes is that Harper and Jackson, Essex and Marianne finally went through the White Rose portal, came back to Peachville. Essex and Marianne headed toward Marianne's family, like Crow Village up in the trees, while Harper and Jackson went back to Shadowford because they were planning to go up the stairs to the hall doorways so that they could get to Winter Haven, where they feel like possibly Angela or Mrs. King is being held. And so they are first at Shadowford to try to get the butterfly pendant, which she does get, that Zara told her to go and get, but she doesn't know yet why. And they also ran into a couple of old friends, one being Mrs. Shadowford herself, who was actually some kind of creature in disguise. And you will learn a little bit more about what exactly she was, but she was sort of this scorpion type being that attacked them. And they were able to defeat her just barely. And then Courtney, Harper's old friend, who was also one of the young girls who was staying at Shadowford, was there. And if you remember, Courtney's ability was to be able to recharge people's power once they felt like they were getting weaker. So that was a pretty cool power. But here we are back in Brighton Manor for chapter 45, which is called Brighton Manor. I backed away as a river of green blood spread across the wooden floor. The three of us backed into the hallway. The stench of rot and decay was overwhelming, and I had to cover my mouth. Jackson opened the front door, and we stepped out onto the porch. I hugged Courtney tight. "Thank you," I said. "You really saved us back there." She smiled, then lowered her head to hide her face. "I'm glad you're home," she said. "I missed you." "I missed you too. Thank God you showed up when you did." "Thank you," I said again. I was so happy to see her, but she couldn't stay here. If anyone found out she'd helped us, she would be in danger. "I need you to do something else for me." "What?" She lifted her eyes to mine. "Take the van and go straight to Lark's," I said. "Tell her what happened and that I'll be in touch soon. Her mom will be able to keep you safe. They'll figure out a story to tell the order so no one will know you're on our side, okay?" Her face tensed and she shook her head. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Can't I just go with you?" Jackson coughed and leaned over, resting his hands against his knees. "It isn't safe," he said. "We don't want to drag you into this." "But we'll need you soon," I said. "Marianne's back too, and she's setting up a special place for us to hide. I promise we'll come for you as soon as we can." Courtney pushed her hair from her face and nodded. She disappeared into the house, then came back a few moments later with the keys to the van. She gave me a brief hug, then drove away. Holy shit, that was intense. I leaned against one of the white pillars. I always thought Mrs. Shadowford was a monster, but I never knew it was literally true. I knew we might face some pretty scary stuff tonight, but that was disgusting. I forced myself to swallow, even though the lingering smell of yuck made me want to puke. So, I get that she was a scorpion of some sort, but what exactly was she? I mean, was that just her spirit animal, like the tiger witch? Jackson shook his head and straightened. "No, this was something different," he said. "Like I said, Leah's talked about them before. They aren't human." Leah didn't share all the details, but she said something about them being created by the Order to act as guardians or protectors of some sort. "Well, whatever it was, I'm glad it's dead," I said. I walked over to the front steps and sat down, extending my legs so that I could get a better look at the gash in my thigh. "How does it look?" Jackson asked, coming to sit beside me. It was hard to tell with so much dried blood everywhere, but as long as it wasn't still bleeding, I was happy. "I'm fine. I just need a minute." I looked up at the big white house with its southern architecture and its never-ending secrets. "I guess we can stop calling this place Shadowford Plantation now, huh?" Jackson twisted to follow my gaze. "It was never really hers anyway," he said. "This house has always rightfully belonged to you and your family." It was such a strange thought. Yes, this house belonged to my family, but at what cost? The only reason it had ever been given to my family was because it was built for them by the order when the gate here was created. It used to be called Brighton Manor, I said, thinking of all the women who had lived here before me. Besides my mother, had any of them been like me? Or had they all obeyed the order like good primas should? I fiddled with the white fabric tied around my wrist and thought of the woman in white from my dreams. I wanted to think she was like me, that all my ancestors had been unwilling victims in the order's games. We should get upstairs. The sun should be coming up soon. I don't want to miss our chance to rescue my sister tonight. Are you sure you're up to it? Jackson asked. I narrowed my eyes at him. Don't start with me. He rolled his eyes and stood up. I'm not trying to talk you out of anything. If you still want to go, I'll go, he said. I just know that a wound like that can slow us down. We want to go in there with the best chance of getting back out. I sighed and reached up for a helping hand. I know, I'm sorry, I said, but we talked about this. Tonight is our best chance, especially now that Mrs. Shatterford is dead. I'm pretty sure the order's going to notice something like that. They'll know we're here. Plus, we used enough demon magic to alert anyone within 100 miles to our presence. I looked around and noticed the ivy growing up the walls was curled and dead, proof of our presence. Then let's go rescue your sister, he said. I nodded and started up the stairs, but he pulled me back into his arms. His lips came down on mine in a sweet kiss. You did great in there, by the way. I studied his supple lips, then lifted my eyes to his. My reaction time was too slow. Only in the beginning, he said. He lifted one hand to my cheek and caressed my skin with the back of his knuckles. No matter what happens from here on, I want to make sure you know how much I love you. The warmth of a blush flourished under my skin, and I leaned into his hand. I love you too. We stood there, staring into each other's eyes, my heart filled with his love and confidence. We both knew we were heading toward a war that could take decades to fight. We also knew we might not survive the night. No future was certain. The only thing we could count on was this. Us. I pulled away and stepped inside the house. Let's go start a war. Chapter 46. She's alive. The hallway was eerily quiet. The noise of Mrs. Shatterford's screeches still echoed in my ears. We stepped over a river of green as we made our way to the stairs. I refused to look at it. I could smell it. That was enough. I took 2 stairs at a time, Jackson on my heels. Together, we walked to the end of the hall where the secret entrance to the 3rd floor waited. Nerves gathered in the pit of my stomach. What would be waiting for us on the other side? Another scorpion monster? Priestess Winter herself? My throat went dry. I coughed and straightened my shoulders. This was the point of no return. I was ready. I stepped into the secret passage and walked up the narrow staircase to the room with 5 doors. A single candle shone its light in the room, casting shadows against the walls. I turned to the door with a demon carved on its surface. The entrance to the Hall of Doorways. This way, I said. The hall stretched out farther than I could see in the near darkness. My heart raced, but I moved forward with my chin high. My hand raised to the butterfly pin in my hair. Zara had brought me down this hallway for my heritage ceremony. That felt like a lifetime ago. I kept walking, looking side to side at each doorway. Some had emblems or animals, while others were blank. I knew I was looking for a door with a butterfly, but I had no idea if there would be more than one. All of the women in the Winter family could shift into butterflies, but it was a common symbol. Even Lark had one on her back when she'd gotten her tattoo. There were probably thousands of families in the order who could shift into butterflies. I had to hope there was only one with a door. After passing at least 100 doors, I finally saw it. A blue butterfly engraved in the wood of a thick black door. Adrenaline rushed through my veins. This was it. I could feel it. I could feel her. A connection just as strong as the one I'd been able to create with Jackson in the underground. She's here, I said. I honestly don't know how I missed this before. Missed what? I turned to Jackson and smiled. Missed my connection to her, I said, an excited fluttering in my chest. I was so worried I wouldn't feel anything. What does it feel like? He asked. It's amazing, I said. I never knew what to look for before, but the second we walked up to this door, my blood began to hum. An energy that's, I don't know, somehow familiar. As if there's a piece of me that's separate and searching for a way back. She's alive, and she's somewhere behind this door. Jackson stared at me with a glow in his eyes. Do you think it's strong enough to find where they're keeping her? I closed my eyes and pictured Angela King. I could see her so clearly in my mind, every detail of her face, her jet black hair. I could hear her voice as if I had a recording of her in my memory. She was a part of me, and now that I knew how to connect with that side of myself, I knew I would be able to find her. Yes, I said, hope rising in my chest. I can find her. Chapter 47, 100 Heartbeats. I cringed at the creaking sound that echoed through the hall as I opened the door to Winter Haven. If anyone was up at this hour, they would have heard that. We needed to act fast. Moving to the center of the room, I sat down as Jackson paced between the 5 doors, ready in case anyone came through. I closed my eyes and concentrated on my sister, our blood bond, our demon bond. At first, I could only feel that she was here in this house, alive. I could tell she wasn't up here on the 3rd floor with us, but nothing more specific was coming to me. I settled deeper into my meditation, letting the room itself fall away. I blocked the sound of Jackson's boots against the floor as he walked back and forth. I stilled my fears and my worries and all that was within my soul until it was just me and her, sisters. It took me a moment to remember how to do this. I'd been able to follow Jackson through the underground with this power, a sort of mental projection that allowed me to extend my consciousness beyond my body. I sent my power out to search for her, my body firmly here in this room, but my mind exploring the house below. I tried to remember the layout of the house from the time I was here before. I imagined walking down the staircase and onto the 2nd floor. I mentally searched the hallways, but I knew my sister wasn't being kept there. My connection to her urged me down, farther into Winter Haven. The grand staircase led down an opulent 1st floor. Everything was so clear in my mind, as if I had sent a ghost of myself down throughout the house. So far, I hadn't run into any other energy. If anyone was home, they had to have been asleep or in another part of the house. I searched the main floor, and my instinct brought me to another staircase off the kitchen. It led down to the basement. I remembered this path because it was the same one we had taken down to the room where my heritage ritual took place all those months ago. Was my sister being kept somewhere in the basement? I took a slow breath in, centering my mind so that I could push my vision farther into the bowels of the Winters' home. The magic extended, snaking down this 3rd staircase like a long tentacle. My arm erupted in goosebumps, and a tingle went through my core. I was close to her. She was definitely somewhere on this basement level. My mental image of her strengthened, and I chased the feeling down the hallway, past the ritual room, and finally to a narrow wooden door. For some reason, I couldn't push my vision through that door, but I knew she was there. I knew I had found my sister. The more I focused on her energy, the closer I felt to her. Even though I couldn't see through the final door, I could feel her fear. Terror gripped her spirit, and I winced, almost losing our connection. I struggled to hang on as her fear intensified. Something was definitely wrong. I needed to get down to her fast. Quickly, I pulled myself back through the space, retracing my steps and mapping out the path I had to take. I know where to find her, I said, standing. She's all the way down in the basement, but I'm pretty sure I can get down there. Is she okay? I frowned. I couldn't see her, I said. There was a doorway I couldn't push through, but I need to hurry, Jackson. Something down there had her completely terrified. Maybe we should shift and just get down there as fast as we can, Jackson said. As long as we can get close enough to her for one of us to make contact with her skin, we can shift and bring her with us. I've thought of that, I said, but if we go down there and it's a trap, then the order has us both. Jackson ran a hand through his hair. So, what are you suggesting we do? I knew he wasn't going to like this next part of my plan, but for me, it was the only thing that made any sense. It was the safest way. I moved my weight from one foot to the other. I need to go down there alone. Jackson stepped toward me, eyes narrow. Absolutely not. We're doing this together, he said. I'm not going to let you go down there by yourself. We don't have any idea what kind of traps they might have set up. Listen, I know this isn't what you want, and I know we were planning to go together, I said. I placed my hands on his biceps. But I didn't expect her to be all the way in the basement. It's too far. There's no way we're going to just walk through the house with no one noticing us, and it's too dangerous to shift into demon form and fly down there. It would pull too much energy from the life in this house. Someone would feel our presence too quickly, and we'd be caught for sure. Besides, if it's a trap, then at least they'll only have one of us. If I don't come back, you can go for help. You can't do this on your own, he said. If we can't both go, then let me go by myself. How is that better? You only have access to demon magic, I said. Any magic you cast is going to be detectable. I can use the human side of my power to go invisible. It's our best chance. Besides, you don't even know how to get down there. I don't want you to go alone, he said. How will I know if something's gone wrong? I walked over him and placed my hand over his heart. His heartbeat was strong against my palm. You'll feel it, I whispered. The room around us was silent except for the pounding of my heart in my ears. I waited, watching the confusion and struggle in his eyes as he decided what to do next. I knew he didn't want to let me go alone, but he also had to see the logic in my plan. If we both went down there, we'd be putting everything at risk. But did he believe in my strength enough to let me go? He lifted his hand to cover my heart, and we stood there for more than 100 heartbeats, our eyes locked. If I feel even for a second that you're in trouble, I'm coming down there, he said. He leaned toward me and pressed his forehead against mine. Please be careful. I threw my arms around him. I will. I kissed him, then turned to the door that led downstairs and into the main part of Winter Haven. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, feeling my shoulders rise and fall as I relaxed and drew my witch's power into my body. Blue energy poured into me, and it felt so familiar as the glamour took hold, so much like home. I opened my eyes and lifted my hand, watching it disappear. Chapter 48, Where Guests Were Not Allowed. I didn't see a soul on the second floor. I walked with the lightest of steps, careful to keep far away from anything I might bump or knock over. The last thing I needed right now was for my clumsiness to get me in trouble. I kept my magic on full alert like my demon training had taught me, ready to act and embrace both sides of my magic if I had to. At each turn, I paused to make sure my connection with my sister was still strong. I had a map in my head, but I also knew I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. I made it down the grand staircase and headed toward the kitchen. As I looked around, I noticed that everything in this house was white, with pops of blue. The floors were normal wooden floors for the most part, but all of the walls and ceilings were painted a pristine white. Almost every piece of furniture was white, and despite the number of children who must have grown up here, there wasn't a single marred edge or flaw to be seen. A blue glass chandelier hung from the ceiling above the staircase. A blue and white vase held a bouquet of blue hydrangeas. A rug thrown across the floor downstairs was mostly white with a blue floral design. How could someone so dark stand to be surrounded by so much light? Priestess Winter was all about appearances, even down to the last detail here in her home. Everything about this place felt fake and manufactured, created to give the impression of purity, holiness. To me, it just felt cold and sterile. She has a cold stone where her heart should be. The tiger witch's words popped into my mind as I studied the house. Yes, Priestess Winter was cold and calculating. I don't know why I hadn't noticed the chill in this place the first time I was here. I guess time and distance gave me some perspective on the kind of person she really was. I felt my sister's energy below me, pulling me down toward her. Could she feel that I was here? What was it she was so afraid of? I shuddered to think what Priestess Winter might have done to her. Following her energy, I made my way through the living room toward the back of the house. I passed through the pristine kitchen and opened the door to the basement. A dark staircase led downward. It was too dark at the bottom to really make anything out, but I knew I was close now. I hurried down the stairs, relying on memory to make my way in the darkness. I knew this part of the basement was beautifully furnished. An extension of the house above, and not like a basement really at all, but when I finally reached the narrow wooden door where my vision had stopped, a feeling of darkness overcame me. I had the distinct impression I was about to enter a part of Winter Haven where guests were not allowed. Was this where I would find the priestess waiting for me? I had come too far, too fast, too easy. But I couldn't stop now. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. I turned it slowly, my heart racing in my chest. What horrors would I face beyond this door? The darkness beyond was suffocating. A black abyss. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped. The air smelled mildewed down here, like a wet towel left in a dark place for far too long. Something skittered along the wall beside my head. I covered my mouth, stifling a scream. I needed light. I searched along the wall for a switch, but couldn't find one. My breath became rapid and my chest tightened. I knew I couldn't go any farther without my sight. I let my invisibility glamour fall away and conjured a dim white orb. Dark gray cement walls rose up on either side of a slender hallway, closing me in tight. I gulped for air, desperate not to lose my connection with my sister's energy. I walked as fast as my feet would carry me, but when I almost stumbled, I had to force myself to slow down. So far, all I could see down here was this long, claustrophobic hallway. No doors or rooms, just an endless path forward. Finally, the hall opened up into a large square room with 3 new possible paths, a crossroads. I stood in the middle and had to choose. But which way? I thought my connection to my sister was drawing me to the right, but when I took a few steps down that path, I felt her presence pull away. Confused, I stepped back into the middle of the room. I took several deep breaths and concentrated again, releasing all the tension from my body and letting my inner instincts take over. Left. She had to be down the left hallway. But when I turned and started down the left hallway, I felt her pull away again. Damn, what was I doing wrong? Out of frustration, I picked the only other option and nearly took off at a run, but something stopped me. This wasn't right. My sister wasn't down any of these hallways. I clenched my jaw tight and wanted to slam my boot against a wall. Had I lost her somehow? What had I done wrong? Standing here in the center of this crossroads, I could clearly feel that Angela King was near, but the second I committed to any path, she grew distant. So where the hell was she? I'd gone every possible direction. My skin began to tingle and my breath stopped in my chest. Wait, not every direction. Slowly, I lifted my eyes toward the ceiling. I hadn't gone up. Chapter 49. No song to sing. Above me, iron cages hung from the tall ceiling. My hand flew to my mouth and my eyes widened. There had to be at least 20 cages up there, and from the looks of it, there was a body in every one of them. It was too dark and too far up for me to tell exactly where my sister was, but I knew instantly she was in one of those cages. She plans to make her a bird trapped in a cage with no song to sing. Again, the voice of the tiger witch echoed in my memory. I shivered. The bodies above me twitched. Jesus, what were they doing to these people? No one deserved this. A drop fell from one of the cages and landed near my boot. This was the source of the drips I'd been hearing, but it wasn't water like I'd originally thought. It was blood. In horror, I yanked my foot out of a pool of sticky red. I looked up and saw that whoever was just above my head was bleeding rather badly. Please don't be my sister. But I already knew it was her. I could feel it deep in my bones and in my racing heart. She was hurt and losing blood. I counted back. She'd been here 3 full days already. Had she been bleeding this whole time? It was a miracle she was even still alive. I had to get her down from there. I looked to the edges of the room, searching the walls for some kind of lever system that would bring the cages down, but there was nothing. Whoever put her there must have flown her up there. I'd taught myself to levitate once upon a time, thankfully, and would have to use that magic again here. I couldn't risk using my demon magic just yet, not when I'd come so far without being detected. I stilled the panic in my core and concentrated instead on lifting my body from the ground and up to the cage. It took a few tries. My hands trembled out of control and my knees had gone weak. These poor people. I knew my sister had only been here a couple of days, but what about everyone else? Some of these people could have been here for years. I had to steady myself. If they caught me down here, they might decide to put me in one of those cages too. I couldn't live a life like that. Besides, if Jackson felt that I was panicking or in trouble, he would risk everything to find me. I breathed in and out, in and out. I let the horror of the situation fall to the back of my mind and focused only on my sister. She was the one I had come for. I would worry about the rest of these people later. For now, it was all about my sister. My feet left the ground and I rose slowly toward the cage, levitating. I kept my eyes on the person above me, not daring to look at anyone else captive here. There was no telling what state I would find them in, and losing my concentration now would mean falling to the very hard cement floor. As I rose, matted black hair came into view. A single pale hand lay near the edge of the cage bars, streaked with dried blood. Tears sprang up, and my concentration faltered for a moment, but I forced myself to be strong. I had to get her out of this place. The cage swung slightly as I placed my weight on it, and I held on tight, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My sister stirred. Her lips parted, and she groaned, her forehead wrinkling in pain or fear. I tried the door, but it was locked tight. I crouched down close to her face. "Mrs. King?" I cleared my throat. "Angela, can you hear me? It's Harper." I touched her hand. Her feverish skin beaded with sweat. Her hair was caked with blood and dirt. My chest ached. She was here because of me. How could someone put her in a place like this? I reached my hand through the cage a little farther and shook her shoulder. "Angela, wake up. Come on, we got to get out of here." She groaned again. Her leg kicked out and she jerked her head violently to one side, smacking it against the bars. Every piece of me tensed. What had they done to her? She seemed to be locked in some kind of nightmare. Her eyes were still closed, but I could see them moving rapidly behind her closed lids. What if I couldn't wake her up? Maybe leaving Jackson upstairs wasn't the best idea after all. There was no way I would be able to carry her. I don't know why this hadn't occurred to me earlier. I would have no choice but to shift with her and fly her up to the 3rd floor. I would have to move incredibly fast if we were going to have any chance of escaping this place. I stood and studied the door again. About halfway up on the right side, there was a keyhole. I tried to use my magic to flip the lock mechanism inside the iron enclosure, but it wouldn't budge. I looked around for something I could use to try to pick the lock manually, but what? Inside the cage, they had all but stripped my sister down to nothing. She was wearing a torn t-shirt and workout pants that were ripped and bloodied. She didn't have any jewelry on or anything in her hair. Wait. I reached up to the butterfly bobby pin in my hair. Zara's gift. She'd said it was the key to getting my sister out of here. I had a feeling she hadn't meant it so literally, but I wasn't sure what else to do. I pulled the jewel from my hair with shaking fingers, nearly dropping it down into the muck and blood below. I inserted it through the rusty keyhole and searched inside until the end of the bobby pin locked right into place. I smiled through my tears. Thank goodness for my years as a delinquent. Carefully, I turned the butterfly pin in the lock and held my breath as it clicked and the door to the cage fell open. I stuffed the pin back into my hair. I crawled in and sat down beside Angela, leaving one leg outside to hold the door open. "Angela," I said. I shook her harder this time. Still, no response. I looked around, not even knowing what I was looking for. I just wanted something, anything that could help me wake her up. I desperately needed her to be conscious. I wasn't even sure I could carry her if I shifted and tried to take her with me that way. The only object I'd ever really shifted with before was the sword when I'd sparred with my father. I had to hope this would be as easy. I thought of splashing water on her face, but there wasn't even any water here in the cage with her. I had no idea if she'd eaten or had anything to drink in days. How long could a person live without water? Panic surged inside of me. I should have planned better. There had to be some way out of this. Think. There had to be some clue I was overlooking. Steeling my nerves and stomach, I looked around at the faces in the other hanging cells. Almost all were women, and everyone was passed out just like my sister. I couldn't really see anyone else clearly, but I could tell there were 2 men among the crowd, 17 people in total, 3 empty cages. What were the odds everyone here would be asleep or passed out? Even though I had made some noise, no one had so much as stirred. And they all seemed to be dreaming, just like Angela. They were in some kind of trance or forced sleep, probably to prevent them from using their magic to escape or fight back. If it wasn't for the obvious nightmares, I would have said it was a blessing to be asleep. I knew from my time in the torture room at Shadowford that being awake in a prison like this would be horrifying. I gripped my sister's hand and leaned my weary back against the iron bars. How could I break this magical spell that was keeping her asleep? I wasn't a healer or someone naturally gifted at this sort of thing. I wasn't even sure if it was possible for me to break the spell. I placed my hands against her skin and visualized her waking up. I could feel some of my power flowing into her, but this only seemed to intensify whatever dream she'd been locked into. The tears I'd been holding back began to flow down my cheeks. My only choice was to shift into my demon form and carry her with me. Since I'd never tried it with a person before, I wasn't exactly sure how it worked. The only thing I was sure of was that my demon power was bound to pull enough energy from my surroundings to let Priestess Winter know I was here. It would put both me and my sister in extreme danger. Jackson, too. This completely sucked. But what else could I do? I was out of options and running out of time until dawn. I wiped away my tears and gripped Angela's hand tight. I took a long, steady breath in and prepared to shift. Just as I began to exhale and disappear into white smoke, a voice stopped me cold. "I knew you would come for her," the woman said with a raspy laugh. "Harper the hero, risking everything for the people she loves. What a noble bullshit." I gasped, cold tingles crawling across my skin like spiders made of ice. I recognized that voice. I turned in the direction of the sound, realizing with surprise it was coming from one of the nearby cages. I stared at the bloodied woman sitting 3 cages over. She wasn't wearing her pearls or makeup, and her hair was shaved close to her head, but her eyes were the same cold blue I'd stared into many times with fear or disgust. I could tell from the contempt in her voice and her fevered stare that she blamed me for being held captive here, and it was my fault in a way. She'd betrayed my mother and had killed her had her killed in an attempt to steal the power of the Prima line. All I'd done was tell the priestess of her betrayal. Was it bad that I almost took joy seeing her here like this? I'd thought no one deserved this fate, but maybe I was wrong. If anyone deserved to be here, It was Lydia Ashworth. Heard Evie waking up over there calling out for mommy. So I think Evie is awake. So I will probably take a slight break while this renders, and then I will record episode 12 for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. So now we know that the Tiger Witch had said some things about the cage, and now we know that she was telling the truth about these cages. But what is happening to the people in these cages? Why are they there? And will Harper be able to save Angela? These are all the questions that we have for next episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to read ahead because you're dying to know, there are links to buy Demons Forever down below if you would like to. If you are new to the series and just happened upon this episode, we have read the first 5 books in total, all the way through here on my channel. So please subscribe. Make sure you hit a thumbs up button down below and go check out those playlists, starting with Beautiful Demons, which is book 1. And if you have been enjoying these readings and you want to support me in some way, there are 2 major things you can do. 1, share the books, let people know about the free book, let your friends know, say, hey, I've really been enjoying this series, and send them a link to download the first 3 books for free. Those links are down below. The second thing that you can do is, of course, to go ahead and purchase some of the books that you've heard me read here for free. That would be super awesome, and I would appreciate it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, as blue as it is, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. Hopefully I will be there for today's premiere, and I will have been chatting with you guys, but probably no Wednesday premiere for me, but I know you guys are going to love that episode, and no Friday coffee chat this week. And then by the time you see me next Monday, we will be at yet another Airbnb and our 3rd house on this trip. So I can't wait to share more with you guys then. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye. Let me find this in